Hey guys, welcome to Manifesting Better. I'm back with another video and another topic that needs to be addressed. I also have an Instagram account, the link for that is in the description box below. Coaching is also available, the link for that too is in the description box below.
Hey guys, hope you're well. So I'm back with the second part of the video that I made, the last video, where I talked about conscious and unconscious beliefs. So if you haven't checked that out, I would recommend checking that out too. So there is no chronological order that you have to watch these videos in. You can watch this one before too, and then you can go check it out. But for these videos to make more sense, it would be better if you watch these two together. I would be giving a small background about it for the people who haven't watched the video. In the last video, I talked about unconscious and conscious beliefs because moving forward in a lot of my videos, I'm going to be referring to these terms. So if you haven't seen that video, it's more about how sometimes our life is guided by our unconscious beliefs and how you can make those unconscious beliefs conscious beliefs, and once they are conscious, how you can start changing things around. And I also talk about a lot about there how your manifestations can also be on a hold because of your unconscious beliefs, and how a lot of times things are coming into your life can be paused because your belief system is not in alignment to what you want. Okay, so in this video, I will be discussing foreground and background triggers, foreground and background beliefs. And this is going to be a slightly extensive video, and in here I'm going to be discussing a few things. So if you have to watch it twice, please do, because once you understand this, you would have a lot of knowledge on how to handle triggers, resistance, anxiety, fears, because the distinction that you can make between these two is going to be very essential so that you can actually get out of these situations faster. What is resistance? A lot of people ask me. Resistance basically means anything that comes up in between me and my manifestation, right? It can be fears, it can be circumstances, it can be thoughts, it can be opposite things, opposite beliefs, anything that comes up in between me and the things that I want to manifest. And a lot of times resistance and how we handle resistance becomes the guiding factor on if we will get the manifestation that we want or we won't, or it also can increase the time between the things that I'm going after and the time that it will take. Okay, so what are foreground triggers and what is basically like a foreground trigger? A foreground trigger is basically a trigger that is triggered based on something that you are actually seeing, which means that in this current moment, there is evidence to believe that that is right now in front of you. For example, I am going out on a meetup with my friends, and there I see my SP with someone else. That's a foreground trigger. That is a trigger that is supposed to trigger you. Or let's say I just get to see on social media that my specific person is getting involved with someone else. Or let's say I see my bank account and I see that the money that I thought is there isn't, or there is an unexpected bill. These are foreground triggers. These triggers happen when there is actually an external stimuli in front of you that is triggering that. And once these external triggers come in front of you, it comes down to your ability to dealing with that trigger, because these triggers have some sense of validation in front of you, right? So it's that these triggers are right now existent. How these triggers usually come is that they first come, they trigger you, your fight or flight response gets activated, you start to feel the feelings of resistance and anxiety come inside of you, then eventually over a period of time it dies down. Any foreground trigger is not going to be permanent. What that means is whenever a foreground trigger comes, it's not just going to keep staying in your mind. It will, of course, the thoughts can keep staying, but the feelings are going to come and somewhere settle. It's not that you would always be on the peak of that feeling regularly, right? There are different ways to deal with foreground triggers. The first one is to accept the fact that foreground triggers are important. And if I won't have foreground triggers, I won't know when a threat is coming towards me. These triggers also help you in many ways. So if I am, let's say, running on a road, like I'm just running, and I see someone or I touch someone comes and touches me, I will be triggered, and that's okay because that's my body's way of trying to protect me. I can see if that is someone who's trying to call me, or maybe it's someone who's trying to steal something from me. Whatever it is, I can actually look at it and it's a trigger. It teaches my body that yes, fight and flight responses are actually working, and when there is a threat in front of you, you can run away or you can fight the threat. Then comes the concept of background triggers. Now, this is where most of the people are stuck, because background triggers are a lot of times things that we don't even know we have, and background triggers are a lot of times things that have been stored up over a period of time in our body, which we have started calling trauma, which we have started calling resistance, unconscious beliefs, things like that. The worst thing about background triggers is that the background trigger is not triggered by an external stimuli, which means if I am randomly sitting and I get triggered for no reason, I'm just sitting, I'm having fun, and I get triggered for no reason, that's usually my background trigger coming up. Or let's say I'm just talking to one of my friends and they say something that has nothing to do with my manifestation, and I get triggered. That can be something that is the result of a background trigger. To give you the best example of what background triggers are, we need to understand the difference between chronic and acute. So this is something that usually people talk about in medical diagnosis, that oh, it's a chronic fever or it's an acute fever. So chronic is basically something that is in your body but is very very low on level and is for a long time. So if someone says I have chronic back pain, that means they have had small back pain for a long time, right? And acute, basically whenever something is acute, it means that it's very very sharp and very very deep and very very present right now, that it's intensified. So if I'm having an acute back pain, that means I cannot even stand up properly right now because in this moment my back pains a lot, right? So that's the difference between chronic and acute. Similarly, the similar difference comes up between foreground and background triggers. So foreground triggers are acute, they come up, you can deal with them, and they pass away. Background triggers are chronic, which means they are there. You sometimes don't even realize that they're there till you actually just are faced with a circumstance or you're faced with something which doesn't necessarily have to be about the manifestation. Background triggers are built based on the trauma that we develop and the unconscious beliefs that we develop over a period of years, right? So, for example, I will give you the best example through which you can understand how a background trigger works. So, think about it this way, that let's say every day when I come back home, I meet my dog, right? So the dog gets excited to see me, right? Let's say every time I come back home is the time that my dog's dinner is supposed to be, right? So let's say I give my dog dinner, and in that moment my dog eats the dinner. But let's say after 2 3 days I pause, right? I come back home and I don't feed my dog. I don't do that, but let's say I don't feed my dog and my dog starts barking. Now here my dog will either first try to bite me or try to tell me that, you know what, give me food in some way, or they would try to find out and try to eat something else, or they would react till the point that they eventually give up. It's just like, let's say, as a child, let's say you are asking for your parents' love, right? So you try different things. Let's say you tried to get your parents' love through self validating factors by doing good things. So, for example, you started studying well, you started hanging out with the correct people, you started talking to them nicely, and they are not giving you love. Then you start to act out, you start to do the opposite, and then they still don't give you that validation. So eventually what happens is that you forget the part that I will get that validation. But you forgetting the part that I am going to get that validation, or my dog forgetting that I'm not giving him the food, or he stops trying, doesn't mean that he's not hungry, or doesn't mean that you are also not hungry for that validation. So where does it go? It gets stored in your body. That's how we form trauma. That's how the unconscious beliefs are formed, based on the trauma and the feelings of that feeling that are formed over a period of time. What that does is that it creates an environment of hypervigilance, which means that it will consistently keep making me feel that my body always has to be activated and always has to be worried about that trauma, because that was one thing I wasn't able to solve, right? So these can actually come out in your resistance, and these can actually come out while you're manifesting things, because unless and until the background trigger is dealt with, it is not going to fully go away. In fact, it will consistently keep feeling like I'm in a consistent phase of resistance and I'm unable to deal with it. Now, how do these background triggers get out, and how do these get triggered, and why do we consistently out of the blue start feeling resistance? And let's say someone didn't say anything about something but we still felt it, because our body is storing that information. So our body is storing that information based on the past, based on the information, based on everything. So for example, let's say I was someone, like I said in the example, that I was consistently looking for that love from my parents but I was not getting it. Anyone who would be a guardian figure in my life, I would have this Either I would try to do the same things and that trauma will get stored again, or whenever they would not give me that love and attention, I would start to connect it to my parents and I would start to react to it based on that. So the trauma that would come out would not be the how this person is treating me, it would be the chronic trauma that I have developed over a period of time in my body that would be coming out in these situations. So it's very important to understand that trauma can actually be stored in the body, and whenever these kind of things come up, this resistance comes up, it's not a bad thing. A lot of times this resistance is coming up so that you can clear it, and how to clear resistance is something that I already have made videos on. But it's very important that when you are in that zone, that you are able to distinguish what a background trauma is and how background trigger works and how foreground triggers work. Because once you are able to distinguish between the two, you would be in a place where you can understand which triggers are things that will automatically go away, which are things that are a result of beliefs that you have developed, which are a result of a trauma that you have developed over a period of time. Background trauma and background triggers are always going to be a result of things that you have stored in your body. And once you are able to understand and once you are able to transcend past that, giving time, and this is where the tools that I use sometimes, like inner child meditation, forgiveness meditations, letting go meditations, things like that that we use, and activities that we use, this is where it comes into play. Because once you start to do these things, you are able to clear the background trauma, because this is not trauma that you're actually seeing. It's something that exists but is getting ignored. So once you start giving it attention and once you start making it known, it starts to come out and you start to deal with it and it starts to get better. Another thing about this is that how does it affect my manifestations? It affects my manifestations because if I have an unconscious belief about something that fights my conscious belief about something, the unconscious belief will always win. So, for example, I have a belief that I am not worthy of receiving love. Very recently, I had a session with a client who was talking about this. She was so resistant to the idea of receiving love that she said that anytime I am attracted to someone, it's when they are actually pulling away from me. And when they come towards me, I'm unable to be attracted to them, because at that time I just don't like them. Then I just don't feel the same way about them. Then it's because in that moment, the reason that I was attracted to them in the first place was their rejection, was not the love that they were giving me. So if I work on my unconscious beliefs and I work on the resistance that comes up with my background trauma, I would be in a better place to be able to deal with both, and I would be able to get out of both in a sustainable and a long-term fashion. Another thing that I would like to say to this, and this of course is not something that I would advise on deeper here, because this depends on person to person, but how do we work on it? So finding out when I am triggered, why I am triggered, what are the unconscious beliefs that are making me triggered, and what is this trigger telling me about me, what are the external stimuli that actually triggers me, and usually when do I get triggered when there isn't anything around me, is going to be a very important thing for you to get out of these situations. This is not just manifestation, this is self development as a human being, which you should be focused on. For example, I have a habit of getting anxiety in the evening. So in the morning I would feel very confident, I would wake up, I would work out, I would work, everything would be going good, and in the evening I would have this trigger of anxiety. So based on that, what I developed is I found out why I'm feeling anxious in the evening. I started working on it. Usually I feel anxious in the evening when the night time comes, because I have some instances in my life where at night things were not good in my family, and that was something that my body stored, right? And at night was the time where my insomnia used to hit up a lot and I wasn't able to sleep properly, right? So that's when my body stored that trauma near the evenings. Now what I started doing is I started addressing it. First I was open to the fact that this trigger might come up. Then I started using the inner child meditation on myself that I also have in my self concept course. I started doing that on a regular basis, and I started planning my evenings in a way where I would have a lot of things to do which are actually engaging to me emotionally. Now, like talking to my girlfriend, meeting some friends, taking my dog on a walk. Every evening, I would fix a time where I would know that, let's say 7 p.m. my anxiety hits. I would go on a walk with my dog at 6:30, so that I can actually start dealing with these things in a sustainable way. These are ways through which you can get out of it, and of course it's a journey. So if you aren't able to identify it for yourself instantly, look for some help. You can find out a coach who resonates with you. I can help you. Like, it's totally on you what you resonate with. After that, you can actually take a look at more than just manifestation for your life to be better. What that means is, don't make manifestation about just getting things in your life. Actually look at it as a self transformation journey, not just to get relationships or to get money and to get things, but to sustain them, to have a peaceful life, to remain happy, to remain joyous. That should be the goal. So a consistent lookout for that can actually be very helpful. So I hope this video makes sense. I know that this will bring up a lot of questions for you people. So please leave them down in the comments below. I will try to make content on it. And I will see you guys in the next one. It is going to be a success story which you all are going to enjoy.
Click the like button if you liked the video. Subscribe and turn the notifications on for more such content. Comment down your video suggestions and I will see you guys in the next one.